All right, welcome everyone. I am very excited to introduce today Michelle Prince, who is the Associate Director of International Admissions at Syracuse University. Welcome, Michelle. We're super happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be joining you today.
Awesome. So I was thinking maybe we could begin by, a quick introduction. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about what brought you to Syracuse?
Yeah, of course. So I'll start a little bit further back than that to give you some context. So I actually began my career as a high school teacher, and I found that I wanted to work kind of and bridge that gap between the high school and the college experience because I knew what it was like to go to college and to need that extra hand, that extra guidance along the way. And so I have now been working at Syracuse for about 6 years. I have worked both with domestic students in the US. I have worked with international students, but one of the biggest groups of students that I've worked with is international students who are currently attending high school in the US.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Now, so for many students who have never really visited Syracuse before, what would you say are the top three strengths? And I know we're just diving in straight away, but what would you say are the top three strengths of the university?
Yeah, this is such a hard question because you're asking me to pick three, and I could think of so many. So what I'll do is I'll divide it into three categories. So I will start with the academic experience. So Syracuse has 10 undergraduate schools and colleges where students can choose from 200 customizable majors and 100 minors. So we really encourage an approach to interdisciplinary study. The second thing is that we are a Research One university. So outside of the classroom, students have a lot of experience to really hone on the skills that they will need to be successful in their careers and solve a lot of groundbreaking problems. So that hands-on experience, I think, is the second part that stands out to me, whether they're doing it through research or entrepreneurship. There's several resources on campus, such as our Blackstone Launchpad, our Student Sandbox, or the Maker Space, for example. And then the third is our community of students. So, for anybody that's watching, I don't think that, Syracuse is the only school out there that's really associated with a color, right? Orange, you can see my orange curtains back here. And that embodies everything that we are, whether it is our school spirit, our student engagement, our collaborative, student body that we have. And so I would say our students are another, one of our biggest strengths that we have here on campus.
That's terrific. And I know you mentioned Makerspace earlier and Sandbox as well. So can you tell us just a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so the Makerspace on campus is a hub for students to take projects that they are working on, whether it is a fashion design student looking to do some embroidery, there is a state-of-the-art embroidery machine there, or a student that is building a prototype, where an engineering student, we have a couple of engineering students that have gone on, to Shark Tank to have their own businesses, their own projects. And those all start in our Makerspace, right, where they're developing these prototypes there. And then our Student Sandbox and then our Blackstone Launchpad are two entrepreneurial hubs on campus. And so students get faculty support and industry support to start their own businesses. And we even award students funding to grow those businesses. So many of our students with that, young entrepreneurial spirit will actually graduate with from Syracuse and have companies already started.
That's amazing. And how about, so I know we've spoken a little bit about entrepreneurship, but I also know that the university is really well recognized for your communications major, right? Isn't it the Newhouse School of Communications?
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I know that's one thing that, students who want to study communications or journalism, I know that they're always looking at Syracuse.
Yeah, so the Newhouse School of Public Communications is definitely a world-renowned public communications program, consistently one of the top-ranked public communications programs in the country. What's nice about the Newhouse School is that students can go in and they can major in the Newhouse School. So whether they're interested in television, radio, and film, journalism, advertising, public relations, there is a fit for them in that communications program. So they can go in and declare that as their major, or a student could even add one of those programs as a minor to support another field that they're studying. So maybe you have somebody that is in data analytics, for example, in our iSchool. They can support data analytics by maybe studying, by maybe having a minor in advertising, or you could have a student that's studying international relations that also wants to study journalism. I talked to a student the other day that was thrilled when I told her that she could also add that on as a minor, even if she didn't want to make international relations her major. So a lot of great opportunities for students in the Newhouse School. I think one of the reasons for that is the small collaborative class sizes. And so students have the opportunity to really be hands-on and get to know their faculty members, from the very first week of class.
Right. I love the flexibility that seems to be built into the program. And then beyond communications, right? What would you say are, the other few popular majors on campus? And are there any new and upcoming majors that students can look out for?
So I'm going to kind of divide that into two categories. One being some of our other top ranked programs that we typically see a high volume of applicants for every year, but maybe we don't have as many spaces for, right? So we might not have as many spaces in those programs, but they are popular, kind of based on ranking and being well known. So I mentioned public affairs before. Also our fashion design program in our College of Visual and Performing Arts, our School of Architecture, which leads to a 5-year bachelor's in architecture, which is a professional degree. So students, they don't have to get a master's degree after that. Entrepreneurship in our Whitman School of Management, information science in our iSchool, sports management in our Falk College of Sport and Human Dynamics, and then our film program in our College of Visual and Performing Arts. So when I think about programs by ranking, being well known, that's what comes to mind. But I think what's really unique about Syracuse is just the depth of programs that we have. So when it comes to students actually graduating from majors, our top number of graduates are coming out of economics, political science, photography, history, computer science. And then the other thing is we're growing right now, our College of Engineering and Computer Science. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but we have a Micron coming to Syracuse. So it's the largest semiconductor facility in North America is going to be based right here. And we have a fantastic partnership with them. So we're extremely excited about this. So, while I named those majors today, I also want to point out that engineering and computer science is a program that we are really growing right now.
And that is music to our ears, just representing, so although I'm based in the West Coast, I'm working with students all over, but a lot of West Coast based students, you can imagine how excited they would be to hear about Micron and to hear about, engineering in CS. But yes, I know that would definitely be something that they're excited to learn more about, right? So, just coming back, and I think this was an excellent segue into, engineering and CS, so my follow-up question is really just thinking about majors, right? And is that something that, the admissions office would take into account when making admission decisions? So in other words, does the student's choice of major come into play, right, when making admissions decisions?
Yeah, so when a student applies to Syracuse, they're going to apply with either the common application or the coalition application, which is powered by SCORE. And the students on their common application actually have to select one of our 10 undergraduate schools and colleges while they fill out that application. So we can admit to program if a student is interested in a specific program, but we are absolutely going to admit a student based on the school or college that they apply to. So when they fill out the common application in the academic section, they will choose either single or dual enrollment. Do they want to study in one college, or do they want to study in two? Kind of nice that they have that flexibility in those options. Then from there, they select those colleges. Several of our colleges do have an undecided option, but they can also pick that specific major as well. So we are admitting into a college, definitely, and then very often into a specific major if the student is not gone undecided into that college. this is a consideration, I should say, when we're making our admissions decisions, because we are reviewing by school and college, and the criteria that we're looking for students in each school and college might be a little bit different. So, jumping back to engineering and computer science, I'll start there. We're looking for students that have taken physics. We're looking for students that have at least pre-calc. For our School of Architecture, that portfolio is a huge factor in our admissions decision process. For a student that's going into sport analytics, we want to make sure not only do they like sports, but also that they're interested in math, right? That they have that business interest, that they have that math interest too. And so we are reviewing by school and college here, and there are different criteria that we look at for each one of those schools and colleges.
Right, that's great. And it's, and I really appreciate the transparency here, right? So students know exactly what they need to, look out for and how they need to approach the process. And so, if we do like a little deep dive into, the student's academic transcript, Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about, what are some of the things that you or another admissions officer would consider as they're evaluating a student's transcript?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's such an important one for students to understand. So when we start our college review process, we're going to start by looking at the school profile that the counselor has provided us, because that school profile offers us so much information and context about what courses have been available to the student at their high school. From there, we can look at their transcript and see how they've challenged themselves, right? We can get a sense of the rigor available to them and then what they decided to take. Then we're going to look at the individual course grades. We're going to look at those college prep classes. And then we're going to look at an overall unweighted GPA. So that transcript isn't just us looking at one number at the end. It's really starting with that school profile, looking what was available to the student, and then how they did in their classes along the way.
Got it. And since we're on the topic of, testing, how do you consider, AP tests, and how important are they in the admissions process?
Yeah. So, what I've noticed kind of is a trend in the last couple of years is some schools are moving away from APs. While some schools have them, some schools don't. Some students might have an IB curriculum, and we receive applications from students all over the world. So while APs definitely show rigor, right? They show us that the student is challenging themselves. It's just one way to show that. Where APs can be really helpful to a student is if they decide to transfer those credits into Syracuse. And so very often students who have particular scores on their AP exams are able to receive college credit for those classes. And I think that does set students a little bit ahead if they've had the opportunity to take APs.
Got it. So I know that one of the things, as a counselor, usually I would tell students that, the AP class tends to be more important than the score that you get at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And we always choose whether or not to send those scores, right? Or students make that decision. But the one thing I've seen, is that in this whole test optional era, I've actually seen AP test scores carry a little bit more weight, or at least that's the feedback I'm hearing from admission officers, just because, in the absence of test scores, and, the applicant pool being as competitive as it is, currently that's what I'm seeing, a little bit more emphasis or, on test scores.
Yes, I would say if the student has them and they are providing them to us, we're definitely using them in our evaluation process. But again, they're not a required means, right, to be admitted into Syracuse. And I always like to stress that, because there are so many different types of curriculum that we see students coming from.
Right, that makes sense. That makes sense. So thank you for that feedback, and for your insights. And I want us to shift gears a little bit to really think about, the student life, right, at Syracuse. Now, how would you, Michelle, describe your student population?
Yeah, I told you, right? Syracuse students are one of my favorite things about Syracuse. And we have about 15,000 undergraduate students divided into those 10 schools and colleges. Adding on our grad school population, it's about 22,000 total students. So we're a mid-sized to large university. We have students from every single state. So, we are represented across the country country, but we also have students from around the globe. So we represent about 90 additional countries on our campus. So it's great that we do have such a diverse student population on our campus. And every year we see that grow and we see that change. In terms of describing our students as a whole, I think the word collaborative always comes to mind because you see them working together within their own disciplines, across disciplines, helping each other with research projects, working together to start their own businesses, and so I think that that's, a really unique thing about our students. And then also the school spirit that comes along with that. So Syracuse is a Division I school. So whether students are fans of athletics or not, I think it is part of our experience. And so they have the opportunity to be part of Otto's Army, right, which is the cheering section at our athletic events. And that school spirit goes into everything else that our students do here on campus.
Right, that's great. And, so I did notice, so while I was doing my research, I did notice that you have over 50 Greek organizations, right? And I know that sometimes that makes students a bit nervous, especially the ones who do not intend to participate in Greek life. And I will always tell them, especially for the international students coming in, don't base this off of the movies you're watching, right? Because it's very different now and things have evolved and changed. But for someone, for a student who's not particularly interested in participating in Greek life, do you feel like they would feel left out? This is actually one of the most popular questions I get asked.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I thought that
Yeah.
you'd be the right person to, to ask.
I think that this is such a common question. It's a common question that we actually receive as well, because Syracuse does have such a robust Greek life population on campus. And I love that you said it's not what it's in the movies, because that's actually the same response that I often give students too, because they have this idea of what Greek life is, but I think that it's so much more than that. So we do have a really robust Greek life program. It has over 50 different organizations that students can join. And it's everything from being part of like the Latino fraternal organization to, what you see in the movies, right? Your profession, but you also have your professional fraternities too. And one thing that I think is great is only about a third of our students participate in Greek life. So we have a lot of organizations to choose from, but if students don't want to be part of that, it does not make up our entire campus community. And then there's like 350 other organizations that students can choose to participate in if they don't want to be part of Greek life. But I would like to share a really fun fact that I learned earlier about Greek life at Syracuse, because I think that this is unique and does tell you a little bit about our history. We were the first university to coin the term sorority. So the first sorority was actually on Syracuse University's campus, and it came from the need and a want to be an inclusive campus community. And so we have had women on our campus since our foundation, which is not true of all universities. And so with that, in the late 1800s, we were also the first campus to have a sorority. So I think as you're thinking about like what is Greek life, what does that look like? For us, it's a very inclusive experience.
That is fascinating. And I definitely did not know that. Very, very progressive.
Yeah.
That is.
I learned that recently too. So I just thought like fun facts to share with everybody.
I love that. I love that. Right. And so, international students, right? That is what you're focusing on. So can I ask you, Michelle, what are some of the, resources or what kind of support do international students receive when they actually, when they come to study at Syracuse, right? They're leaving their homes, their families behind. So how does Syracuse actually support these students?
Yeah, so the first thing is going to be the email communication that we are going to send them as soon as they matriculate to Syracuse. So we start very early. Everything that they need to know, all the important paperwork that they need to complete, they're going to get that information right away after they have decided that Syracuse is the school that they want to attend. And then we do orientation all at once. So instead of having many mini orientations over the summer, we actually bring our entire first year class, all of our new students to campus about a week before classes start. International students get to move in first within that group, which is kind of special. So they get to become familiar with the university first. They get to do things like open a bank account, right? If they don't have a bank account in the US, that's something that they'll need to do. They get to get a cell phone if they don't have a US number. And so they get to arrive first. And we do that purposefully because we understand that there's a lot of extra stuff that goes into starting a college experience in the US compared to if you're moving right from already being in the US. And after that, after they go through orientation, they have a second orientation, which is kind of fun. So it's known as Syracuse Welcome. It's really vibrant. It's really exciting. It is a mix of educational, social icebreakers that are led by our orientation leaders. And we want to make sure that our students have a sense of belonging, right? When they first get here, we want them to be here for a week, get to know each other, get to know their community, get them acclimated, right? With being a student at Syracuse. So that way on their first day of classes, they feel like part of the community already. It's not something that has to take place over the semester, right? It's something that we want to accomplish when they first get here. And so as much as we could do that by introducing them to our Orange traditions on campus, introducing them to each other, the support services that are available, we want to do that before their first day of classes even begins.
Right. And I think when you were describing all this, you actually took me back to when I was applying as an international student. I remember, up in New Haven, looking at, bank accounts and trying to banks and researching different banks. There weren't too many options. This was over 20 years ago,
right.
And just I think that's definitely helpful, coming in earlier and really getting organized with all these other, tasks that need to be completed.
Yes. And I will say, I went with a student this semester to open her bank account. So, we walked down to the bank, I helped her through the process. And I was so impressed with the bank and how organized they were at helping students, whether it was providing a translator, whether it was knowing what documents the students needed. I was impressed with how well they took them through that whole process. And they're right, it's a bank, it's not part of our university, but they were acting as if they were to make sure that they supported our students.
That's fantastic, right? And that's the kind of support that students, and especially families would be relieved to hear.
Yeah.
Right? Right. So that's great. Now, if I can ask you, Michelle, what is, one piece of advice that you would give seniors as they're working on their college applications, right? That's something that, we're in September and we have students who are, frivolous, just very fervently, writing away and working on their essays and things like that. Is there any advice you'd like to give them?
Yeah, I don't want students to be afraid to talk about themselves. Students should be they should feel so accomplished, right? Of everything that they've done during their high school experience. And so when it comes to their extracurriculars, the supplemental questions, the essays, we want to get to know them. And so as they're completing their application, that should be their biggest goal. How can the admissions committee get to know me based on the information that I put here? So their personality, their strengths, their life experiences, lessons learned, right? Anything like that can be really useful for a student to add to their application. And then we hadn't talked about this yet, but I do want to note Syracuse offers interviews to students. We do them all virtually. And for an institution of our size, that is somewhat unheard of, but we will interview any senior that wants to connect with us. And that is an evaluative interview that gets added to their application. And it only aids in a student's application to Syracuse. It only helps them because it allows us to go beyond what's on their paper, right? And so we always encourage students to sign up for interviews with us.
That's fantastic. Great. And that's a really great point. And, I hope our families and students are listening to this. And, I hope you've walked away with tons of insights. And thank you, Michelle. I think that's a great place to even end because students know that they need to reach out and they need to really present themselves and their application in their own authentic voice, right? So thank you for hitting on all those important, pieces of advice. And thank you for all for all your insights and your advice that you've provided during our segment today.
Of course, it was my pleasure. Yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to help.